Every business has 10 problems at any given time that need to be solved. And the way we solve our problems is by asking questions and getting answers that help us to get to the next step, to get into action and try things. Because we can't just solve problems in thought. We need to actually take action. And to help you get into action, to help you feel confident and provide clarity so you know what to do next, I am hosting 2 free, completely free live Ask Me Anything sessions on May 21st and May 22nd. They are kind of divided by pre-launch. If you haven't launched yet, I'll take questions about that. And then post-launch, if you have a business and you're ready to grow it, or maybe you have questions about whether you checked all the boxes correctly, I'll focus on those questions. And to register totally free, you go to foodbizsuccess.com/AMA 2024. Get yourself registered. You can come to one or both of them. And it's a way for you to get to know me and my expertise after working with hundreds of packaged food brands and helping them launch and scale to 100K and beyond. This is a great way for you to come and ask that burning question so you get an answer and can move forward and get more success more quickly. When we get into motion and action, we see success and we get momentum. So come join me, get yourself registered. The link is also below in the description. See you there. Welcome to Your Food Business Success. This podcast is for early stage entrepreneurs in the packaged food industry ready to finally turn that delicious idea into reality. I'm your host, Sari Kimball. I have guided hundreds of food brand founders to success as an industry expert and business coach, and it's gotta be fun. In this podcast, I share with you mindset tools to become a true entrepreneur and run your business like a boss. Interviews with industry experts to help you understand the business you are actually in, and food founder journeys so you can learn what worked and didn't work and not feel so alone in your own journey. Now let's jump in. Welcome back to the podcast. So glad you're here with me today. This conversation with Anna Zesbaugh of Better Buzz Brands is awesome. It's so good. She is a friend. She's a colleague. We're both based here in Denver. We run in similar circles and see each other somewhat frequently. And I'm always so awed at everything that she is doing with her business and how far she has come. So you're going to hear about how she launched her alcoholic hard kombucha company during the pandemic, and it almost didn't happen. I mean, the tenacity she had to have to make this work, and then how she has pivoted and evolved and grown into different kinds of sales channels and just trying new things, how she's hired a team. So without further delay, here is our conversation. So welcome, Anna.
Thanks for having me.
What a story you have had. So take us back to 2020. Your world blew up and you started a business. So tell us a little bit about the backstory on that.
Yeah. So I was working in luxury hospitality, hotels, restaurants, and then my most recent job was a creative manager at a corporate event planning company. And COVID happened and I got furloughed from my job. And we had this really crazy time in Denver where the mayor shut down all of our liquor stores, called the Denver Prohibition. It lasted about 3-4 hours. He went back on the news later that night and was like, just kidding, terrible idea. But I was bored at home on the couch. And I started researching Prohibition, like, hey, what actually happened during that time? Was it just like this? Probably not. And found out that classic cocktails really emerged during Prohibition 1920s to mask bad flavors of hooch or alcohol, because people were making in their houses, in their bathtubs, bathtub gin. And so, yeah, classic cocktails emerged during that time. Then my sister was living in San Diego in 2020. She was going to college out there, and hard kombucha was like really coming onto the scene. And I've always liked kombucha. Like I've kind of been into like health and wellness. I started practicing yoga when I was quite young and just interested in the space. And then the name hit me. Hooch, like prohibition alcohol, Booch, like kombucha, could not get it out of my head. And was like, I think I'm just going to go for it. I was literally bored at home. And so I kind of created this like mood vision board of like what I wanted the packaging to look like. And yeah, then I decided to incorporate the business, which is wild and crazy.
So no big deal. I'm just going to create an alcoholic beverage. That can't be that
Yeah,
hard.
alcohol, of all things. Great idea. Great idea.
People, and I'm curious, yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit about the alcohol piece because people often ask me, like, do you work with alcohol brands or THC, CBD? And I'm like, some of it, yes, and some of it, no, I don't. Like,
Yeah.
that's just so much. So what were some of the hoops you had to jump through for the alcohol piece?
All of the hoops, actually.
So
Um,
many.
yeah. So, like, going back, so I incorporated the business in July of 2020, but I was like really ideating before that, like before I incorporated. And I reached out to a bunch of brewers because I knew that it was like a brewed product similar to
Yeah.
beer. But what I didn't know at the time was that kombucha, because of the bacteria nature of it, is actually like a beer contaminant or like a contaminant to a lot of like machinery. So a lot of places that contract produce don't want to deal with kombucha because they are worried about it contaminating other products because of the live bacteria, which is like the whole reason for enjoying kombucha is the bacteria, the good bacteria. So I emailed like 30 brewers and one got back to me and was like, sorry, can't help you. And I was like, okay, great. Off to a great start. And I was hoping for someone that could help with the recipes and the formulation because that's not my expertise. My expertise was like, well, what expertise I had was what I thought my secret sauce was, which was like the idea for classic cocktail hard kombucha, the branding, making it like a ready to drink cocktail, but it being a kombucha, not brewing. I had no experience in brewing. So I walk into this place on South Broadway. I was like, I think I have to hit the streets. Like, I can't, like, email's clearly not working for these people. So I walk into this place called Dos Luces on South Broadway. And the owner was working, and all breweries were closed at this time. So it was just like a one-man show. And I walked in and I was like, hey, are you the owner? And he was like, I am. And I was like, so I'm starting this hard kombucha company. I need help from a brewer. Are you interested? And he was like, I know nothing about kombucha. I know nothing about brewing kombucha, but I did go to school for fermentation science. Maybe I can help. I was like, I'll take a maybe. He was like, come back on Thursday, come to me with your ideas, and let's chat about it. So I did. Came back on Thursday, and he was like, I can help you with recipes formulation, but I can't help with like long-term production. And I was like, that's fine. That's a step in the right direction. It's a lot more than I've gotten. So I said, okay. He told me a list of things to go get at the homebrew store, and I went and bought them, and I got like a homebrew kit, and I started making it in my house in addition to what we were making at his facility. So I bought like, tea, sugar, all of like the hydrometer to measure alcohol, all of this stuff. And basically every single day for the next 9 months, I would go to Dos Luces and we would work on fermenting together. And so I really learned how to produce an alcoholic product, how to measure, initial gravity and things like that to measure alcohol. And then alongside of that, while all like the brewing was happening sort of on the day to day, was on the back end when I was working on the branding with a close friend who is a freelancer. And then I got connected to an attorney who specializes in alcohol, specifically beer, which was, I think, super key to knowing what was like, as you know, there's label requirements. There's certain things that you have to have on packaging. And so I think, especially in a highly regulated industry, having someone that knows a lot more than you do is key. So that's how it all got started. And then all the pieces sort of came together and we launched 9 months later.
Okay, amazing. Yeah, that feels like a good treat. I mean, you were definitely like, you were putting time in every day working on it. So,
Oh, yeah. It wasn't even like I was interacting with my social life that much because
right. We were all locked down.
yeah. So it wasn't like, oh, I have plans with my friends, or like, oh, I have a work happy hour. Like, there was nothing happening at this time. I had the time.
So you put in the time there. So it sounds like the attorney did they kind of help you walk through some of the regulations and things that you had to do on top
Yeah,
of
like get our
regular?
wholesale license to sell alcohol, like get the permits that were needed, make sure all of our formulas were approved by the TTB, like all of the legal slash requirements that needed to happen for alcohol. We had like crossed the T's, dotted the I's, thanks to legal help.
Yes, definitely important, especially when it comes to regulations and things. It's the
Oh,
worst thing. Yeah. Imagine if you like had it all done and then you're like, oh, we missed this one thing and now we're
right.
screwed.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Well, the branding is amazing. I mean, you have definitely done such a great job all the way through the business with your branding. And so you launched 9 months later, and what was that like? Tell us about the launch and obviously, e-commerce really isn't available. I don't know if you did any there, but you kind of had to go more mainstream, right? Hit the streets.
Yeah, well, I think direct to consumer was buzzing during COVID. We could not tap into that, being like that you can't really sell beer direct to consumer. Not only that, but it's like so expensive and it's heavy to ship and just didn't make a whole lot of sense. So we hosted a launch party at this like kind of secret location in Rhino. We had just like popped up in this space, and it was actually the same weekend that the mask mandate had been lifted. So it kind of felt like this like weird serendipitous like prohibition kind of party. Um, and it was just actually really aligned and it was perfect. And then from there, so we launched and we basically are like, okay, we're starting to sell here in Denver. Then I basically was taking samples, well, prior to that launch party, but taking samples to like store to store liquor stores. We didn't really start with like chains. More just like independents, right? Like your neighborhood liquor store is where we started. So I walked in with samples and it really allowed me to create a relationship with the buyer to be like, hey, we've got this product. Do you want to buy it? Get the feedback, actually tell the story of how we got started. And most liquor stores very, very clearly remember the Denver Prohibition. I don't think they knew of anyone that had created a product based on it. And so they all kind of chuckled and thought it was funny. Like I remember going to these liquor stores and they had like t-shirts made like I survived the Denver Prohibition. Like it was funny. Like the story like really resonated with them. And so we had a handful, I think 5 liquor stores that I was kind of like servicing on my own, gathering data, hearing what, customers thought about it, et cetera. And then like 3 or 4 weeks later in June, we brought on a distributor to really help like amplify and grow the product.
So yeah, you kind of had the mainstream liquor store avenue. Were you able to get into any grocery stores along with that too, since they had opened up?
I don't think any grocery stores, like at this point. Like I think we'd been working on, now that we had a distributor, I think we'd been working on like getting approved at Whole Foods and getting approved at natural grocers and Sprouts and Total Line and things like that. But those came later. We were really focused on like independent to start and really only liquor stores. Like bars and restaurants still were not really open yet. So we didn't really tap into that until maybe 6, 9 months later. Even then, like this is mid 2021, things like still weren't really open yet. So we were just kind of like taking what we could get, which was mostly liquor store shelves.
Okay. So you get through that and then what? What happens? You get some data, you're getting good feedback.
Yeah. Well, then the place that we were producing, which was like a small local brewery here in Denver, like basically couldn't handle capacity anymore. They were like, beer is our number one priority, and that's our beer. So we found like a larger contract production facility, a co-packer, to make our product. And actually, they were doing non-alcoholic kombucha already, so they just needed to get an alcohol license, and they were, pioneers in the kombucha space. So doing hard kombucha felt a lot easier, and it was just more aligned. They were, a production facility. So we started to ramp that up. We had gotten some feedback, like certain things on the cans were a little bit harder to see. And so we did like a couple quick packaging tweaks. And that's really when we started to get traction for like Whole Foods and Total Wine and places like that. So then we kind of integrated with a couple of chains. I had hired my first employee, like our director of sales and marketing was the title, literally just anything else that I didn't do, she did.
Was it a full-time employee?
I think she started part-time and then worked up to full-time. Yeah, was kind of how it started. And it was, yeah, just the two of us probably for like the first year. And then we started adding more people as we expanded. We launched in Minnesota a year later, which is where I'm originally from, which hindsight 2020, I don't know that I would have launched in Minnesota because I don't think we really thought too much about product market fit. I was just like, oh my God, all my friends at home are so excited and I got to bring it to Minnesota. But hard kombucha is very niche in and of itself. And in a market like Colorado, that's a little bit more accepting. It works. Minnesota, probably less so. So we definitely deal with a lot of education when it comes to our product. A lot of people still don't know what kombucha is. They don't understand why they should be drinking hard kombucha, what matters, why, etc. Yeah, so now is really, well, then to now is really kind of the education on the why behind the product.
So were you making it in Minnesota as well, or just making it in Colorado and shipping it?
Yeah, shipping it. Yep.
Yeah, that's a lot of logistics and it's not close.
No,
It
no,
makes sense. You're like, I have home ties there. It seems like it would make sense, but that's, yeah, logistically, that's a lot of moving pieces for sure.
definitely. Yeah.
Because that's what we love to do as entrepreneurs. We get something good going and then we're like, let me complicate it.
Let me make it harder for myself. Yeah.
Instead of just like working your circle outwards, right?
Right. Exactly. Yes.
And
Exactly.
yeah, kombucha is one of those products that, and especially hard kombucha, it's like kombucha's already a little bit niche and either people love it or hate it or they're like don't know anything about it. And then you put it in the liquor store. Now you got
I think it can be polarizing. Like flavor, like fermented foods in general, I think are polarizing. Like you either love pickles or you hate them, you know? Like you either love kombucha or you don't. Like I feel like a light beer, like a Coors, people are like, nah, I could take it or leave it. Yeah, it's just more polarizing. So there's a lot more education, liquid to lips, demos, tastings, events, etc., to really move the product.
So, and was it hard to get a distributor? How did that process go?
Not really. I think I wish I would have like looked at more. Like I think I was just like, this one seems good. And I didn't really know to like
Yeah, you
vet.
don't know it
Like,
till you know.
no. Um, yeah, I was just like, perfect. That sounds great. You're gonna help me sell? Awesome. Which, yeah, as we know in the space, distributors don't necessarily sell the product. A lot more logistics behind it. But yeah, no, we just pitched them on the product. I just pitched them on the product, and they were like, "Yeah, we like it. Feels aligned. Let's do it." So no, it was not.
Typically, they're different distributors, right, for alcohol than like food.
Yeah, all different. Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much
Nice.
alcohol, just alcohol. Alcohol can do some other things, but non-alc cannot do alcohol.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
makes sense. You can share as much as you want to share, but can I ask how you were funding the business to this point, or were you profitable right away? I think people think like, oh, you must be like rolling in the dough at this point.
No, because I'd been furloughed from my job and I was the only employee at the start, I was on unemployment. So I had saved up a lot of money during COVID, not doing anything. And the initial batches were small. So it was easier to turn the cash quicker. And then my parents had put a little bit of money into the business, and that was really it. I mean, I didn't have super high costs because, again, the production runs were small. I had hired a friend to do the graphic design. Like, I was pretty scrappy about it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think had I been like, oh, I'm going to hire this massive agency to do my design, and I think I could have easily spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, but it was all done pretty scrappy. So yeah, it was mostly just bootstrapped.
Nice. Yeah. And then was it hard? Was that scary to hire somebody? I think people always get pretty nervous about doing that piece.
Yeah, I feel like when the time is when you're just like, I don't have enough hours in the day to get this done, even when you're working like so much. Like now, after hiring and kind of building a team, I feel like I start to notice these points when it's like, oh, it's sticky, it's sticky. Like you want to hire like right before that. But of course, then I didn't know, but I knew that I needed help and that I couldn't do it all by myself. Alcohol is a very face-to-face business. Like you have to show up every single day to keep your top line, to keep your product on the shelf versus, traditional CPG and grocery. It's a little bit more done behind the scenes, behind the computer. Like this is a show up face-to-face business. It's this deals in physical checks still, which shocks me on a daily basis. So I knew I needed help. Like I knew that I did not have the woman power to be able to do it alone. Yeah.
I think hiring is one of the biggest capital expenditures that people wait too long on a lot of times because they're scared, and I get it. But you got to free up your time to do what you're best at. And so hiring when it's uncomfortable, like that, finding that sweet spot. And I have my master your business program. We talk a lot about when to hire and getting it set up with processes and
Yes.
SOPs and everything. So you're not just like, I don't know what I'm doing, but you figure it
Yeah,
out.
that's not great either. I feel like coming from the hospitality industry, know that human capital is so important because you can't have a hotel, you can't have a restaurant without human capital. And so I'd taken some human capital classes in college. And so I felt like I knew that I needed that. I knew that I couldn't do it alone. And so just kind of had to bite the bullet and be like, all right, let's go for it. And again, it was pretty scrappy up until that point. So it wasn't like, and I was still on unemployment. I was still making money and not paying myself through the business. So it wasn't that crazy. But I don't think I thought about it at that time. I don't think I was like, wow, how amazing that, like, essentially unemployment paid me to start my own business.
Well, you do pay into your own unemployment. I've been on unemployment twice, and it's like sometimes I feel guilty about
Oh,
it. And I'm
no,
like, no,
no,
I
no.
paid into that.
Oh, 100%. 100%. Yes. Yeah. My money coming back to me,
Yeah, exactly.
sort of.
Exactly. All right. So let's fast forward. So you're cruising along, you're in two states. Would you call it like slow, medium, or fast growth in the alcohol space?
I would say medium. We have gotten a lot of accounts. Like, our account base is quite large. So I would say that part of the growth has been quick. The velocity turns on the shelf are slower. So like the initial sales like we are able to get, and especially in Colorado, we don't have a ton of, competition in hard kombucha space, and we're the only local option. And so we kind of rule there, but it's not going to be a seltzer, a beer moving product, a wine moving product. It's just, again, goes back to this niche point of like, it's not generating these turns. People think about kombucha and they're not like, I'm going to have 7 in one sitting. And that's what I'm going to do to get me like really buzzed. They're like, I'm going to be so scary. Like, you know, yeah. So I would say quicker on myself, and not that it's easy, but we've had success there. And where it's been slower is the education and the moving off the shelf.
So before we move on to the launching the NA product, what were some of your strategies for the education? You said demos, of course, like getting, what'd you say, liquid to lips? That's all.
Liquid to lips, hands in hands is what we say. A couple different strategies. One is, of course, at the point of sale, like any sort of marketing material, stickers you can put on. And then, of course, tastings. You've often seen those like 3 to 5 p.m. on a Friday or Saturday. People are sampling products. That's a really great way because I think people were nervous about trying kombucha, nervous about trying hard kombucha. It's a new category. So we're trying to drive trial, right? And then get people to repurchase after that. So that was a big, and has been and still is a big strategy of ours. Beer festivals, wine festivals, kind of you name it, we land in all of the categories, it seems like, or we're kind of this like ancillary to all of them. So we attend a lot of those, just, knowing that these people are probably people that enjoy drinking beverages. So we attended a lot of those. Random pop-ups at like, boutiques, yoga classes, you name it. Like, we were like, if they're interested in having us there, we'll be there. So just trying to create a really robust, again, promotional strategy.
Very much in person, though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very much so.
Yeah. Okay. So then let's talk about the NA launch. You decide to go ad.
Yes. So we team brainstorm quite often on like new flavors to add to Hooch Booch. Very classic cocktail, prohibition still inspired. Like, we do not really want to waver away from that. And someone was like, what about the classic corpse reviver cocktail? And we're like, ooh, the name sounds kind of cool. No one really knows about it. Our top selling SKUs or top selling flavors for Hooch Booch are ones that are more recognizable, like an old fashioned, a bee's knees, etc. So we're like, I don't know about that. Interesting. Then at the same time, we've seen this huge shift in the beverage space to this sort of low and no category. People are getting sober curious when we're at events. People are saying, I don't drink, or I'm not drinking today, or, they place alcohol on this very specific occasion of their day or specific occasion of their week or month or year. And we see this huge seasonality of summer peaks, and then we slow way back down like a bell curve. And we were like looking at the data and we were like, people are asking for non-alc. Maybe we do a play on words. Maybe, and this is kind of over a couple of weeks. We're kind of stewing on this idea, and we're like, what if we like take the word corpse reviver and make it like, what if it has electrolytes in it? And what if it's a mocktail? And what if it drinks, what if it has benefits still, but it's non-alcoholic? And so that was kind of our original idea of the corpse reviver. We wanted it to be a mocktail and we wanted it to have electrolyte benefits. And so we launched with that. And we quickly realized that that was maybe a little bit too confusing for the consumer. And all of the areas and the hurdles that we were running into with Hooch Booch, such as expansion, we were still seeing because it was marketed as a mocktail, which is an alcohol alternative. So they were ID checking at the store because we had like boneless cocktail on there. We were like, corpse reviver, boneless cocktail without bones, no alcohol. And we had
you were being too clever.
we were way too clever. And I think this is something to kind of break down even further too, is like the consumer's dumb. And I'm not saying anyone that's listening is dumb, but like you capture someone for 2 seconds. And, the retailers that we have on board are like, well, if you're saying it's a boneless cocktail, we have to check IDs for it. Like you're essentially marketing it to someone that's supposed to be 21 plus. So we scratch it. We go back to the drawing board and we're like, well, that idea was cool. It was really clever. We might need to reel it back a little bit. And so we did a ton of research on, what constitutes as an NA beverage, what the different categories are in NA. And right now, I think it's very confusing because the categories are kind of merging. You're seeing these like mood boosting drinks, then you're also seeing these like cocktail alternatives and aperitifs. And, there's so much that's happening in the non-alc space, but we decided for simplicity's sake to avoid everything that we've been dealing with alcohol, that we would go fully functional and that we would redo the packaging and that we would take a deep dive into consumer behavior and preferences to say like, hey, I think we could really drive more velocity if we open up our usage occasion. Instead of just being a drink that someone could enjoy from maybe 4 p.m. to 10 p.m., now we're saying you could enjoy it 24 hours a day. You can drink it as your mocktail. And, you see all the time people pouring their poppies, their Olippops into a wine glass and drinking it as a mocktail. So we didn't have to say it was a mocktail on there. We can make the beverage however we wanted and market it all day long. So that's kind of how we decided to reel it back and reposition what we were doing. So long-winded, but that's the whole story.
Yeah, I remember trying the very first, the first round and really enjoying it. And especially I choose not to drink, especially a lot of networking things and stuff. So I always really appreciate it when you had your product there. So and I thought it was great. I mean, you changed the formula a little bit too, right?
A little bit, but not crazy. Honestly, not crazy. It was more like the packaging and positioning. That's now just changed the game, which is wild.
Yeah.
And so telling and so important that the liquid has to match what you're going for on the packaging. Like it has to go together.
And so I love the flavors. They're like botanical a little bit and like they're not just like grapefruit.
Yeah. And we did the same thing with Hooch Booch too, like everyone was making a hard kombucha as if it was just a kombucha with alcohol, like lemon, ginger, blood orange, mint, which like that's all fine, but like we're marketing alcohol here, like let's change it up a little bit. So we kind of took that same methodology into Corpse Reviver of like, you can walk down the grocery aisle and you can see lemon lime. You can see all of these standard flavors. That's not what's going to set us apart.
Yeah. And I mean, the new packaging is just beautiful. And so, so this year you took it to Expo West.
Yes.
And that was your first time having a booth there, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I had walked at Expo East. I'd won the ticket through Naturally Boulder. And I walked to Expo East and I was like, yeah, this is cool. And everyone was like, Expo West is so much bigger. Expo West is so much bigger. And our COO and myself, we had chatted about it and we're like, it's a really big expense. Should we do it? Should we not? And ultimately decided like, if we're going to get our name out there in the functional and non-alc space, like we got to go. We got to like scrape the pennies and be like, we're going. And I think it was one of the best investments we've made to date.
I got to get a photo of your booth and I could share it out because I heard so many good things about your booth.
Yeah,
thank
you. I'll send it. Yeah.
So, but you were up for a Nexty award. And so how'd that go?
Yeah. So I'll chat about the booth real quick and then I'll chat about the be kind of all encompassing. So we last minute like decide to go to Expo, like maybe 6 weeks before. So we're like, all right, we signed up, we go. Like everyone had been like, get a spot in the North Hall. We'd asked a bunch of, industry vets questions on where we should be, how we should do it. And, I reached out to all of these booth vendors to get quotes, and they were like astronomical, like $20,000, $30,000. And I was like, you know what? That just doesn't seem realistic. Like, I'm going to go back to my scrappy mentality. I think we can get a pop-up booth. Our graphics are so cool. Let's lean into the graphics. Let's do a cool outfit, and let's just like sell ourselves. We don't need this huge, massive booth. We literally got an 8x10 booth, carried on the plane our pop-up booth, and we're like, we're just going to go with it. And then got these like hand-painted jumpsuits. Anyways, that's what drew people into the booth and drew people into the product. Now, I have submitted like Hooch, Booch, and beverages in the past to awards. And I've always known that like in beverage industry, like people definitely look to those awards. I didn't really know that much about the tenacity, but I was like, I think we should submit for it. And had submitted, and then we dropped off samples. The first time that we dropped off samples, we did not have them finished in the cans. It was literally sitting in the tank at our brewers. They gave me 3 big bottles of it to take, and I took an empty can that we had gotten, like branded, that had just come in. And this is like the deadline. Like this is like the day that they're due. I take the empty can over to our old brewers in Denver, and I have them pour the liquid into that branded can and then seal it on their seamer in the machine, because I was like, we have to present this finished product, but we don't even have the finished product. It's not even done yet. We finished producing like 3 weeks before Expo and then shipped to Expo. So it was like so quick. Then they told us we were in the next round, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Like they have no idea what I went through to make these samples happen. Then of course production's finished, and I brought them more samples, and luckily the office is in Boulder, so we could literally just drive them down the street and we didn't have to ship them. But yeah, so then anyways, we go to Expo, we're sitting at the award ceremony against like, all of these other brands that are in our category that have been around for longer than we have for sure and have really innovative ideas. And yeah, we won the best new beverage at Expo, which is really exciting. And we were seriously so shocked. Like I looked over at Shannon and I was like, and if we win, we're all going up on stage. She's like, don't get your hopes too high. And I was like, but if we win, we're all going up.
We should at least have a plan just in case.
And then they called our name, and we were just so honestly shocked. Like it was just so new. And so I don't know, it was crazy. But so exciting. Yeah.
Amazing. Where have you gone with that you like have been able to chart new territory? Are you still going in liquor stores with that? Like what's your strategy on that?
Yeah. So, I mean, prior to Expo, we were just selling through like our alcohol distributor here. And that's pretty much it. So from there, and I had been talking to a lot of retailers pre-Expo. Like I had reached out to some like regional kind of chains that I had known about, letting them know we were going to be at Expo and blah, blah, blah. So then, of course, post-Expo, I'm like, did you hear we got the next seat? Like rattling it off, because it's a big deal. And
it is a big deal.
Retailers know that it's a big deal. And so I'm like, leveraging all of that. And so we've definitely, I mean, I think it's a little bit of both. Like, some of them had tried the product before and were waiting till post-Expo to get it, but it's definitely opened up more doors. And now people are like, oh, it's something to watch. And I think it helps. It's not going to change the game, but having that little, award symbol gives validity for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm glad it was such a successful investment. There was good ROI.
I had no idea. I was like, this could either like be really good for us, or we're going to be wasting a lot of money.
Yeah, it's not cheap to do trade shows. So
the four of us team members, luckily we're all like around the same age gals, but we all stayed in one room because also all the rooms at Expo were sold out. So like literally we're each sharing 2 queen beds, our team of 4.
Oh my God.
So it was just, I don't know. I think like really a true testament to like entrepreneurship and like what it takes. Sometimes you see all these, massive brands at Expo and you're like, oh my gosh, I can only imagine one day. But sometimes it's just scrappy to get there at the beginning.
Yeah, people loved it. And you mentioned your team. Who do you have on your team now? What roles are they filling?
Yeah, so we have a COO. She's fractional. She's been with me like literally since day one. Her name is Shannon. And then we have a sales director here in Colorado. Her name's Lauren. And then one of our sales managers in Minnesota, Riley. That was the 4 of us that went. And then we've got a team of people at our tap room here in Denver, which is we sell both product lines, alcohol and non-alcohol there. And then we've got a couple of other fractional people, and then of course a large tasting and promotional team as well.
And do you mind explaining? Some people might not be familiar with that term, fractional COO. So what does that mean? And how has that been good for your business?
Yeah, so we have a fractional or part-time COO, operating officer, and FO, financial officer. So basically two positions that I think are extremely key to a startup and a scaling business, but probably don't have 40 hours of work for them, nor can we pay for these people 40 hours of work. So we take them for 5, 10, maybe 15 hours a week, and have them work on like a really expertise level at a rate that's, affordable for us.
I'm assuming they contract out their services to other
Yeah,
people as well. So then that's how they kind of build out
correct.
their work week.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's great. I mean, there are a lot of people that do fractional work. So we're seeing more and more of that.
We've started a lot of people on our team from a fractional standpoint, or like, started them at the tap room and been like, get yourself familiar with the product. And I think most people that are willing to start part-time have been the ones that have lasted the longest. It's a good way to like get your toes wet and see if this is something you even want to do as well. And again, also makes the expertise more affordable for us.
And because you have a team helping to support you, you got a crazy wild hair up your ass and decided to open a physical location,
Yeah.
tap room. Sometimes I'm like, people ask me all the time, how do you get everything done? And I look at you and I'm like, I don't know how she does it.
The tap room kind of came like around the same time as Corpse Survivor, but it kind of been like an idea in the back of my mind for a really long time. Basically, during 2020, 2021, starting the business of Hooch Booch, we, attended a lot of beer festivals, wine festivals, like I mentioned, and everyone was like, "Oh, where are you based?" And we're like, "Denver," and they're like, "No, no, where? Where is your brewery?" And I'm like, "Oh, we don't have one. We contract produce." And I think in the beer world, like everyone has a brewery. Like that's where you make your product.
It's a pastime here, to be clear, in Colorado, especially. Like that's what people do on weekends is go. Yeah.
It's just the culture. Yeah, it's the culture here. So I was like, I feel like we need a physical location. And coming from the world of hospitality, I was like, we can drive trial, we can do events, because so often we were doing events and pops-ups like around the city, but with alcohol, it's so difficult. I'm like, if we have our own liquor license, we can manage it on our own property. We can now bring outside vendors into our space. I knew I didn't want anything booming, and that again wanted to do it sort of scrappy. So it's this small little space nestled in Rhino in this like little complex. It's about 1,500 square feet. And, if one person's in there, it feels cozy. If 50 people are in there, it feels cozy. And yeah, so we opened that in September as, a way to drive trial. We serve, it is a full bar. So we have full spirits. Of course, we make a lot of hard kombucha cocktails. We serve quite a lot of mocktails. We see a lot of people coming to the space for that.
Yeah. So cool. So I loved that space. And
it's such a good space, and it's like a good community hub, and it's just I felt like we were missing like a home base, especially now with everything that's happening. It's nice to just like, our team's kind of in and out grabbing samples, and it's a fun collaborative, like any meetings we have, we can host in our space. And so it's good to have.
And so the last thing I wanted to ask you about is alternative sales channels, right? So you were doing the traditional liquor stores and things like that. So you have gotten into Red Rocks, which is a big music amphitheater here in Colorado. And I know you're expanding into some other kind of event spaces. So can you share a little bit about what that process has been like? And I know you had to get different size cans and
There's so much that goes on with that. In the space of beverage, we sort of dictate on premise versus off premise. On premise meaning like a bar, a restaurant, a hotel, a venue. Then we have the off premise, which is like a grocery store or a liquor store. And what we say a lot in the industry is that on premise sales drive off premise sales. The more you can like see it on a menu, the more that you maybe taste it at a beer hall, the better it is to drive it in Whole Foods, etc. So we were like, man, maybe we should be leading more into on premise if on premise sales really drive off premise sales. Well, because we live in such a niche category, we were like, we should look at venues. And kind of once the door started opening with venues and we realized that we did have such a niche, like that a lot of these places have exclusives on beer. They have exclusives on seltzer, exclusives on wine, exclusives on non-alc, but no one had a provision for hard kombucha in their contract. And so we kind of found this like crazy little niche to be like, we can get into venues. So we kind of leaned into that and have been leaning into that. I'll say it's expensive and I'm not sure that the ROI is there, but we're testing the waters to see what's possible. So basically, how it works is you get like a sponsorship deal with, in Red Rock's case, Denver Arts and Venues, or at the University of Denver's case with DU. And then the concessionaire is the one that's purchasing the products and buying it. So it's kind of like this whole three-part triangle relationship, if you will. That's very difficult, I'll say, because the sponsorship piece is a marketing sponsorship. Then you've got to work out the logistics of getting the product in venue. So it's interesting. And alcohol, again, is very highly regulated. So I'm curious to see what's possible in the non-alc realm with venues. But we've been leveraging a lot of our relationships that we've gotten with Hooch, Booch, now with Corp Survivor. There's so many alternative channels. You know, there's weddings. That's a huge untapped market. You know, bar carts. I mean, concerts and venues, I think, is one of the biggest ones because that's just where people find out about products and find exposure. But yeah, I mean, there's food service, there's hotels, you know, and the grab and go fridges in hotels, we do well in those. There's so many different places that a product can be put, but I always come back to with our sales team, like I always say, like, is the juice worth the squeeze? Like you could drive yourself absolutely insane trying to get into every single spot. And so ultimately I come back to at the end of the day, like what is actually going to turn velocity for us? It has to be a spot that's in alignment. Hooch Booch is not going to sell well at a dive bar. It's just not going to. And so let's stop wasting our time at the dive bar and let's go for maybe a more high-end spot where we're going to be able to see the turns.
And that's why it's so important to know your customer, right? And understand
Yeah.
like who is your avatar that you
Yeah.
mainly sell to.
Yeah. We come back to like a persona all the time. Like, does this person go to these concerts? Does this person shop at this store? If not, then we probably shouldn't be selling there because we might get it one on the shelf, but the whole part of it is to get it off the shelf. So yeah.
Stores will discontinue you fairly quickly if it's not
100%.
moving. And it's a lot of effort to get it to them and then get it back.
To get it back, yes.
Oh, and then I saw a billboard like a little while ago.
Yeah.
I was like, what? There's a billboard. You got a billboard.
So, I mean, yeah, with alcohol, like there's so many ways you can and cannot market. And one of those ways that you really cannot market is like digital ads. It's really hard to do digital ads with alcohol, just with like Meta and Facebook and all of their requirements. But out of home has always been pretty strategic for alcohol brands, like billboards and doing some fun stuff on there. So we played around with it. We, you know, picked strategic locations that were close to high volume liquor stores or grocery stores for us. The messaging's got to be there. The creative's got to be there. It's got to be something that's fun and cool. You can't just be like, buy this beer, you know, like it's got to be something that's good and catchy. So play with it. Again, it's really hard to quantify. So I don't know that we'll do it again, but
I like that you're experimenting though.
yeah.
You're trying some things. And then, but I think what I really appreciate about you is you come back to the data.
Oh
And,
yeah.
you know, I like to give those things like a certain amount of time, like it's a 3-month thing or a 6-month thing or a year-long thing, but we're going to keep evaluating it and actually keeping KPIs and tracking.
So important. You got to track. You have to. Yeah.
We can just spend and spend and spend, but
You can spend
yeah,
till
we
the
got
cows come home.
But is it actually working?
All of your money. You could easily do that. Easily. It's an expensive business. Easily. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. And then are you getting into direct to consumer at all with Corp Survivor or?
Yes, I think we'll try to work on getting into Amazon shortly just because shipping beverages is expensive and they're obviously a fantastic logistics company. But right now we do sell on our website and it's been going extremely well. We also do like fair wholesale. It's been nice to like post something and see an order come in because that's just like we've never had that data. Again, we now have customer data to see who's actually buying things in customer emails, whereas we never really had that data before. And shockingly, people are interested in buying it online. So I'm like, cool, I'll take it.
Well, I so appreciate you sharing your story. I'm curious, I know you have really leaned into communities and getting support. So maybe if you could just kind of share a little bit about how that's been really useful for you, especially we're very fortunate to have Naturally Boulder here, Colorado Food Works, things like that. So, um, how has mentorship or community supported you?
I feel like it kind of goes back to the human capital piece of what we were talking about earlier, where like I know that I don't have all the answers when it comes to CPG and or alcohol. Like I'm the first to admit that I'm still very much learning. And so I think industry groups and even just other female founders, navigating the space as a young woman in the space. But yeah, Colorado Food Works, Naturally Boulder, Startup CPG. There's so many organizations that are supporting people in the space. And I think multiple ears, eyes, mouths are better than others. And so I'm just constantly asking questions and trying to learn. And I think building those networks now, I feel like I have an arsenal of people in my tool belt that I'm like, I've got a question about sales. I know who to call. I know someone that knows something about marketing, or I know someone who scaled a business. Let me talk to them. And so most people I think are super willing to lend advice and share anything that they know, especially in this space. So might as well tap into the network.
Right, right. I'm sure, yeah, you would not be in the place you're at now
No,
without.
no, I just ask a lot of questions constantly.
Yeah. And you're essentially building out an advisory board, right? Like people you can go to and, I like to say until you have your own, like borrow mine, right? Like I have all these connections or,
Totally.
get into groups that have those connections. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
well, where are you going from here? What's exciting in your future?
That's a hard question. Where we're going is Hooch Booch is really trying to simplify operations. We've come out with a lot of flavors. And so, again, we're looking at the data to see which ones are performing well and which ones are not, and kind of trimming the fat, essentially, getting rid of what's not working and amplify what is working. So, a lot of that. Of course, summer at the Tap Room, we're really excited to host a ton of events and things. So, keep an eye out for Blind Tiger events. And then Corp Survivor, just expansion and retail. We've been seeing a lot of, retailers really excited about the product. So we'll continue posting on where you can find us in locations. Yeah, that's what's happening.
I love it.
Great.
So good. And I love that you're willing to yeah, cut the,
You
what's
have
the
to.
phrase? I'm like, it's okay. Like your children can be ugly. Like, be willing to cut it.
Exactly.
Your babies.
Totally. Yeah, you have to be able to. You can't get tied to one thing because that one thing might not be what's going to make you money.
Right. At the end of the
At the end of
day,
the day,
you're
we
here to be.
are running businesses here,
Yeah.
not operating nonprofits, unless that's the space you want to get into.
All right. Well, thank you, Anna.
Yeah,
It's been so
thanks.
fun to chat with you.
Yeah, so chatting with you as well.
So where can people just find you real quick? Obviously, Instagram,
Yeah,
everything under Hooch Booch.
TikTok website, either drinkhoochbooch.com or drinkcorpsurvivor.com. Two separate.
Well, I will wish you a great rest of your day. Appreciate your time, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks. Bye.
Such a great conversation with Anna. I really appreciate her just being so open with you guys. And I know there's so much you can take away from that conversation. Some of my favorite things are that she was just tenacious. She did not give up. She was going to figure out how to get this stuff brewed. She hired before she felt totally ready. And she just keeps going. She keeps trying new things. She's willing to pivot and she's willing to raise money and keep going to the next level, not getting stagnant and staying too small because that's where we lose efficiencies. So she needs to grow bigger quickly. And she's also willing to pivot, to cut things, to, say, this is not working and move on to what is. Until next time, have an amazing week. The smartest thing you can do as an entrepreneur is to invest in a who to help you with the how, to speed up your journey and help you skip the line. When you are ready for more support and accountability to finally get this thing done, you can work with me in two ways. Get me all to yourself with one-on-one business coaching, or join Food Business Success, which includes membership inside Fuel, our community of food business founders that includes monthly live group coaching calls and so much more. It's one of my favorite places to hang out, and I would love to see you there. Go to foodbizsuccess.com to start your journey towards your own food business success.